What is going on, everybody, and welcome on in to the OBR post-game show, the first of many, kicking things off as the Cleveland Browns fall today to the Green Bay Packers in the first preseason game of the 2024 season, 23-10. Listen, you don't want to see me. Nobody even wants to hear me. We got a jam-packed roster of people getting ready to come on. We got some OBR vets. We got some of our new folks with the OBR, and the exciting thing here tonight, we're talking Browns football. The future former home of the Cleveland Browns was alive and well with football tonight, and we are going to talk about it. We're going to talk about what we learned. We're going to break things down and what we can take away from this first preseason game for the Cleveland Browns. Joining you as always, I'm your host, Michael Keefe, and I'm going to just start bringing people in. Maybe we'll do it one at a time. It's like a reveal. This is real fun. I got like a whole thing going on here. I'm just going to start bringing people in. I'm going to start with my buddy, Brad Ward. Brad, man, football back in Cleveland. How you feeling?
It was good to watch football. It was great. Good game.
Football is
fantastic. Good. No, good interview by Jerry Jeudy. That's probably the highlight of the game.
Oh yeah, girl dad vibes.
No,
Love that.
I'm just kidding. No, there's good stuff there. I'm just joking. It was good. I'm glad football's back.
Yeah, man. All right, we got one of our newest people here at the OBR. Although you know her if you follow the Browns, Abby Mueller, coming on in. Abby, what's going on? How you feeling?
Feeling good. I was walking around downtown today, seeing all the Browns jerseys again. It was a little crisp in the air. It felt like football season was back for sure.
More Browns jerseys or Savannah Banana jerseys in downtown?
You know, today? I'm actually going to have to say Savannah Bananas jerseys. They took over the city today.
Yeah, as they should have today.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right. Next up, you could catch this next guy on the React with Brad Ward every Tuesday at 7 p.m. Pete Smith. Pete, how you feeling?
Mixed, I guess. I mean, they kept score, so you don't like to lose, but like I wasn't nearly as down as most people were. I think the areas the Browns are really good, they were good. The areas where you have a lot of questions or a lot of injuries, they were not good. So it's a mixed bag. Big day for the Cade York believers. If you're trying to get a draft pick for him, this is the perfect day for you. Crushes 55, looked like he was good for 155.
Yeah, that thing was boomed. We're going to talk about it. You know, we're not getting through this thing without talking about Cade York. We're going to get there.
Kicking.
A couple. Oh, it's our favorite topic. Brad and I, we went to a game with a few former OBR members last year, and we had to get there early to watch Cade York warm up. A real highlight of my life. We're going to bring in our next contributor, Sam Penix, another one of our newer members to the OBR. Sam, what's up, man?
Not a whole lot. Some good things and some not so good things, but I think overall some positives and just good to be back. I think, just see the team getting back on the field and a lot of the new faces.
I love it. All right, Casey, I need you to bring last person I'm bringing in. I need you to bring the energy here. Casey Kinnaman, who you can catch a lot of times on kind of any of our streams, but really with Brad Ward on All Eyes on Cleveland, you can catch him a lot there. Casey Kinnaman, man, you pumped to have football going again?
A game happened. We can leave it at that. A game happened. It started and it finished, and now we are here.
I like the Woody thing you got going on. You got the chalkboard going on back there.
What's it say? Yeah. DTR equals fun.
You got it. That is the equation. That's what I walked away with.
Good stuff.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that 100%. But listen, first of all, before we get into all of it, this is the crew we're going to roll with the post-game show. And so there's going to be a lot of good stuff talked about here. This is a tremendous crew of experts here on the OBR streaming network. But while we're at it, whether you're on YouTube or Twitch, make sure you hit subscribe, make sure you like it, share it with your friends, get over to the socials and hit follow, and do yourself a favor. Look at these tremendous people that contribute to the OBR. Get over to the OBR.com and make sure you get your subscription to the OBR.com. We're ramped up. We went all off season with 4 shows, 4 nights a week, 5 shows, 4 nights a week on the streaming network. It was busy on the website. It's going to ramp up now. We're going to add more shows to the streaming network, and we've got all the amazing work they do writing on the website. So get over to the OBR.com and make sure you hit subscribe. So listen, again, the Browns lose. It's always wild for me to go through the preseason and watch people react to the actual result of what's happening. because I don't know that anybody cares about the result actually in the building, but man, the fans care about the result. So here's what I want to do. I gave you all a minute just to say hi, but I'm going to send it around the horn again, and then we can all just discuss, and we can just kind of have a roundtable here of just kind of give me your number one takeaway that after you watched today's game, where it really was just an immense amount of third stringers and guys really fighting to make the roster in general, going up against the Packers. Give me your number one takeaway. Casey, I ended with you, so now I'm going to start with you on this one.
Well, we all know the strength of the defense is the defensive line, and I think Isaiah Thomas is going to make it really hard to sneak him on a practice squad. I think he looked really good. He looked large. He definitely looks the part and set the edge well. And if you were hoping to be able to sneak him onto a practice squad, I think today got a little more difficult.
Send it around. Anybody can respond to it. What do we thought? Stick with Isaiah Thomas instead of the defensive line, because I think some other people are going to have some things to say about defensive linemen. But Isaiah Thomas in general made some nice plays. What's everybody's thoughts? Did he stand out to anybody else as you watched this game?
Clearly, yeah, he stood out. He was definitely,
Brad's saying,
ahead, Sam.
it's. I think the foregone conclusion was McGuire would be the last edge again, but I think Thomas. Clearly, if he keeps up this level of play, he'll make that a battle for sure.
It's still going to be McGuire. Like, who are we kidding? But that doesn't mean that he wasn't good. Like, Contain left the building when the first two lines left, and it just became a greedy mess of guys trying to get to the quarterback. But Isaiah Thomas was good. He showed out in a way that we haven't seen since his rookie year. I mean, last year he was sort of a foregone conclusion that he wasn't going to make this team. But, like, this is what the Browns have to offer. And I covered this sort of going into the game. They were featuring 8 defensive linemen with 3 years or less experience. So you're going to have guys that other teams want. And it would not surprise me if the Browns make trades, plural, like I've talked about. I think Maurice Hurst could be one of those people. But if Isaiah Thomas continues to play well, there's no question that there are going to be teams that are going to be – I cannot wait for the waiver wire, because everybody's going to end up in Carolina that way. So if you're a team that's sort of not on that early part of the waiver wire, you're going to need to give up something to get these players. And, like, if you want to throw out a potential situation, it would be if another team right now has a center of the Browns or tackle or something along those lines, it could be a player for player type deal or draft picks, whatever.
All right, next takeaway. Let's go over to you, Abby. Your takeaway, your biggest takeaway from today's game.
Yeah, I think, one of my bigger takeaways was DTR's play. We saw him really excel last preseason as well, so I don't think it was so shocking to see him do pretty well today. But for that Browns quarterback room in general, I could see us going in a similar direction with last year in terms of how we were able to get an asset back for Josh Dobbs. Could be doing the same for Tyler Huntley and just moving forward with the 3 other guys at quarterback. I think that's something Andrew Berry has excelled at, is getting some lower level players. When teams are desperate, they will give you a 5th or a 6th rounder. And I think DTR was able to show that he's, still a competent player and that they can be comfortable with that they could maybe end up getting something for Tyler Huntley. So I'll be looking for that, I think, for over the next coming weeks here. If an injury happens on another team, someone gets desperate, they might be coming in for that.
Man, everybody else, and you guys can react too, but Abby, 100%, I think a lot of people are going to leave this talking about DTR. Again, Casey's got it on the board with DTR equals fun. But again, I think the conversation this offseason and with the 4 quarterbacks in camp, I think Huntley was always going to have to do something tremendous to surpass DTR, as they've used a draft pick on him and such. But I do think in a lot of people's minds, the conversation was going to go Huntley and DTR, because Winston's going to be the backup and Watson's going to be your starter. And I'll tell you what, you don't overreact to one thing that happens in a preseason game. But DTR, everybody else, Abby brought it up. Guys, DTR looked really good. And Huntley didn't really make a whole heck of an impression out there for various reasons. So, yeah, DTR was great. What are you guys' thoughts?
Tyler Huntley is on what amounts to be a quarterback internship, and it's good. Like, this is really positive that there are quarterbacks out there who go, I can look at Jacoby Brissett. I can look at Joe Flacco. I can look at other quarterbacks who have come to Cleveland and come out better for it. And I think that's ultimately what Tyler Huntley did. To me, as somebody who bought stock early on DTR coming out of UCLA, I'm happy with my investment. But my big contrast from last year was all chaos. Like, he would escape the pocket and crazy things would happen and it would sort of work. There were a couple plays that, like, obviously him jumping over the guy or escaping, but like when he actually threw the ball, it was very under control and just picking the right spots and making the right throws. And he just looks more comfortable, smarter, and he wasn't getting a whole lot of help from his blocking. And you didn't have Cedric Tillman out there. He didn't have a whole lot of guys. So DTR seems to be the guy who's going to, at least right now, I'm curious if he will start playing earlier. I think he played this late because they want to give him more reps. But if he's playing earlier or wherever, he's the guy to me who makes the Austin Watkins story. Whoever that's going to be this year, I think DTR is the guy who's going to sort of make that happen because he was just throwing darts all over the place. Amari and Brown, whoever, James Prochet caught a ball. You got a couple of Jamari Thrash catches. Like, he just gets it to guys. I mean, we saw more. I think Zaire Mitchell-Payton had more catches in this game than he's ever had in preseason. Even Aiden Robbins looked like a savvy vet catching the ball out of the backfield. Like, DTR just does things that make guys better.
Yeah,
So
he looked frenetic last year. He was winning, just being athletic and getting people to react and just making plays. Today it looked calm. Today it looked easy for him. He was finding answers. You just got to be impressed with his progression. But I also wonder if him playing in the second half exclusively was more of a case of them trying to showcase Huntley, because I think Huntley is going to be the trade candidate of these quarterbacks. So they're trying to get eyes on him and hoping he plays well.
Go ahead, Brad.
that was kind of my point. You kind of said it there, Case. I wonder if they flip-flop him, because if you really want to showcase Huntley, don't you want him to play like against the threes at the end and look good like DTR did today? Not that it makes a difference, but if you're really trying to trade him, let's see if they flip-flop him as we go through the preseason, because it would make more sense to play Huntley at the end of the game and have him look better than he did today, hypothetically.
There's also
Just
a
a
lot.
thought.
There's a lot of tape on Huntley, though. He's played a lot of actual meaningful reps in the NFL. So I don't know.
But there's a reason that
he
he was There's a reason he was unsigned too. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So,
Sam, quarterback thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with everyone else. DTR looked really good. I think the play style that he had today, just what he was doing, I think that's kind of like the idea for this offense of how the quarterback's supposed to function and how it's supposed to work. The ability to make that crazy, chaotic play when needed, but for the most part, just facilitating in a methodical, controlled way and letting your playmakers do the majority of the work. And I think that's something that, again, as you guys are saying, like, he didn't do a whole lot of that last preseason because he was just running around doing whatever. And then this just shows, he's in year 2 now. So he's taking the steps, making that progression. And I think today was really encouraging.
For
Brad,
what it's worth, I would say I don't think DTR has ever been concerned with Tyler Huntley. I think he is entirely focused on catching Jameis Winston. And right now, it looks like Jameis Winston's very safe, but that may change as we go. And by the way, I think Jameis Winston looked good for what it's worth. He didn't play a whole lot, but I thought he distributed the ball really well. But just from a mindset point of view, I think DTR is entirely focused on that number 2 spot. And I think the Browns are focused on him being able to get to that, because ultimately that's their best play going forward. They don't want to be doing the 1 year, however many $1 million veteran backup. They want to be able to use that money to get more players that can help you win. That's the whole reason they took DTR when they did. So just from that mindset, I think I think the Snoop Huntley thing is just its own element. Like, he's there, whatever, but I think it's all about really number 2 and number 3 and how that looks. And just from an overview, obviously all the questions are about Watson, but if you're coming out of this game, one preseason game, whatever, you feel pretty good about your quarterback depth chart.
yeah.
Brad Ward, skip it over to you. What was your big takeaway that we haven't talked about yet?
So I'll maybe do like one quick positive. So DTR made all the wide receivers look really good at the end, right? Like St. Brown crazy. Like this is a guy that had 26 catches last year for like 200 yards. When they signed him, I was like looking at his stats, like this is crazy, right? He looked really good out there. He looked sharp. He got open. He got separation. He's small, but he played a little bit bigger than he is. Thrash looked good. DTR made everybody look good. But at the same time, I would say that the wide receivers like Tillman, Bell before he got hurt, and Mike Woods also looked good at the beginning of the game with Winston. So as far as the pass game goes, I would say it's a pretty positive. The wide receivers look good. They looked open in the offense early and late. There was kind of a lull there when Huntley was in. But for the most part, I thought the wide receivers looked good and the pass game looked pretty good from Winston to DTR without, the crap in the middle, where it got really bad. Defense still can't guard an end around, Pete. They're just flipping it left, right, just running off the end like they,
I continue to blame Jim Schwartz for the entire experiment of Elijah Moore end arounds. Basically, they crushed them all summer. They go, this will work great in real games, and then everybody could actually defend it.
Yep, absolutely. And then, I have a question, and I'm just going to present this question. Why is Dorsey on the field? Like, I was looking forward to all season, like, having him up in the booth. Like, that's going to be great correlation, between the two. Like, who has Stefanski been leaning? And then Barry said, I don't know if this is true, but Barry said he's going to be on the field during the games, the actual games. Like, I don't know. I just kind of want to throw that out there. That threw me for a loop there. He's been a booth guy his whole career, hasn't he?
Yes. Now, I can't help but wonder if they really like Chad O'Shea in there. And I know Chad O'Shea, super popular coach, who, by the way, great job on the wide receivers today. Didn't you love that today, Casey? Awesome.
Yes,
anyway, I do think if he's actually going to be out on the field, it's two things. It's one, they really like who they have up there. And two, Watson. Being able to not just get on the phone, but
face to face
on the tablet with him and be there. And if ultimately, yes, I would rather have him up in the booth. I like the eye in the sky for your offensive coordinator being able to see the field. But ultimately, all these things, whether it's play calling or this, it's all about what Watson prefers, and that may be the situation that he wants.
Can I keep going, Mike, for a second?
Hey, listen, it's your world. We're just living in it, Brad.
I'm just going to go through
We're
a couple
talking football.
things.
I don't care what you do.
James Hudson is a real. I mean, the left tackle situation is a real problem. Like, let's get it out there. Like, if we don't have a timeline on Wills, Hudson looks terrible. There was rumor they had to stop practice the other day just to get through, and then he's out there today. He gave up a sack. It was actually more pressure up the middle, but he doesn't look great. I just want to know what their answer is if Wills isn't ready. I mean, what are they going to do? I mean, they need to be, I don't know. And plus, I just put out my cut candidates list. I probably need to add center to that now with Whippler down. So that's an issue as well. So I would say the offensive line is kind of a problem at this point. I have some questions.
Well, James Hudson, I'm not confident they're going to keep 4 tackles. I mean, I think ultimately the Browns know what their timeline is for both Conklin and Wills. I mean, they have to, obviously.
I hope.
But they do have a lot of options for what it's worth. If they do feel like they want to keep a 4th tackle, Jermaine Ifedi, Hakeem Adeniji wasn't bad, but you're only getting so many reps, so it's hard to really get too much off of that. The center thing, I actually thought the third dude was okay. For what it's worth, the NC State guy. Now, obviously, they need somebody else, but I don't expect them to make a big expense, and there isn't anybody expensive to go get and add. The best player at that position was on the street was Connor Williams, and he re-signed with the Dolphins. So I don't think the Browns are going to look at it all that badly. I assume Whippler has a broken either ankle or fib type thing at the bottom. And I'll be curious to see how they handle that. Are they just going to pup him, or are they going to just say IR and sort of let him ride out the year? But Whippler had to prove that he was viable. It was not a given. Now, the other possibility, who was also injured for this game, because that seems to be a theme, Michael Dunn can snap, and Zach Sinter can theoretically snap. So they've got options. I'll be curious to see what they do now without Whippler going forward, because obviously they got to get ready for joint practices this week with the Vikings.
Casey, Brad laid it out there for us. Casey, Abby, Sam, Casey, start with you. Really just ultimately back to the main point that Brad was making. He's got his level of concern seems to be red alert, like the orange light behind him. As far as the offensive line goes, Casey, how you feeling? Are you at that same point? Are you feeling red alert on the O-line?
Red alert, maybe. Yeah, I am after today. I wasn't 2 weeks ago. But if you look across the NFL, no team feels good about their offensive line depth. I think we just felt better about it, and now you got to look at it. A couple guys get injured. The tackle thing, it's scary. I do think Adeniji and Ifedi, they could be those guys who just move wherever they have to, but you don't want them out there on a full-time basis. The center thing is troubling because Pochich, he's injury prone himself. So it's definitely it's thinner there. Dunn can't snap. I'd like to see Zinter get some work there now. I definitely would like to see that probably, against Minnesota because you're going to be playing depth guys anyway with the starters getting all the work in the joint practices. So it's bleak, but it's bleak across the league. This isn't just a us problem.
Speaking of Zinter, any delusion that Wyatt Teller can be traded and he's ready to go, you're out of your mind. Zach Zinter, rough day. I'm sure he will get better, but this was not it as far as if you're going, hey, we can just trade our borderline all-pro guard and just be fine with it. No, you cannot.
Abby, send it up to you. Your thoughts on the offensive line just in general, the starters, the depth, and everything in between.
Yeah, I was thinking about this earlier today on the centers in the preseason for the Browns. I think it was 2 years ago when we had two centers injured in the span of like 3 days in the preseason. It was just like, okay, great start. This is going well. So definitely some concerns there. I wouldn't say full red alert as Pete kind of alluded to. The team probably feels some type of way about the status of Conklin and Wills and how they are in their progress for the season. So I kind of have to trust their judgment on wherever they're at in their recovery process. And as you all have kind of mentioned, offensive line is just one of those things where every team is never going to feel 100% confident all around on the offensive line. And they have some options and ways they could go. It's definitely not perfect, but I'm not 100% full red alert.
Sam, last word on the offensive line here.
Yeah, I agree with pretty much everything Abby said. It's a problem, but it's one that the team is aware of, and they knew coming into this year, like Wills was injured. He wasn't going to be ready to go at this point. I would assume they're feeling like he's going to be ready week 1. But again, like he's in the last year of his deal, of his rookie deal. He's on his option now. So he's not guaranteed to be the long-term option at this point. And they have, both of the guards are aging and will be up for new contracts at some point as well, if that's the route that they go. So there's a lot of, I know we're used to kind of having this top of the league offensive line with some good quality depth over pretty much the entirety of the last 7 years. But I think it's coming down to crunch time and things could get a little bit more rough, but I'm going to wait and see before I really get freaked out about it. If we're approaching week 1 and we're still not sure about Wills and Conklin, then we can have that discussion of, this is going to be a real issue.
Little quick update. Our people over there in Berea, Fred Greetham, Noah Weiskopf, they have reported on the Luke Whippler injury specifically that there is a fracture and he is going to require surgery, Kevin Stefanski said. So he wouldn't say whether it was season ending or not, but I would imagine smashing a bone and needing surgery on it at this point is probably going to end Luke Whippler's season. So a little update on the O-line there.
Our centers, man, like Nick Harris got into that role, like never made it to the field. It's insane. That's crazy. Feel bad for the guy, man.
Sam, we just heard from you, but I'm going to send it back to you. I think we got Sam and Casey left, right? On their thoughts here, their big takeaway. Sam, what was your takeaway that we haven't talked about yet?
I know the defensive line has been mentioned already, but even those end of the roster guys, Sam Kamara, Juwan Briggs, those guys were making some plays. I know the rhetoric around the defensive tackle room is, well, maybe one's going to get traded. What is it going to end up looking like? But I would say, based on all on-field performance to this point, not including draft capital, no contracts, nothing, that it's a pretty wide open race for that last spot, even if you assume that Hurst is going to stick around. I don't know how much of an impact that Ika made today, unfortunately. I think we were all hoping for a little bit more.
He was there for a minute,
but we'll see. We'll see what he looks like the next 3 games, but I don't think he's guaranteed a leg up over Briggs, who I thought made some good plays. He looked. There were a couple times I mistook him for Hall. I was like, that guy's making, like, he's quick. I was like, oh, it's not Hall, that's Briggs. So I thought that was interesting.
All right, so I'll just open it up to you guys. Anybody else on D-line talk? I know we kind of went around with that already, but Brad, what were you going to say there?
So I didn't notice enough, and I'll ask. I forgot to look really and pay attention to this. Did they do any of what they were talking about all off season? Did they do any shade nose 3-tech stuff today without Tomlinson there? I think it was all 3-tech, wasn't it?
No, they did a little bit 2-eye stuff, but yeah, I mean, they were wider, but 2-eye 3.
Does it feel like they just have, they talked about that a lot with Tomlinson getting his knee scoped and Ika looking like he can't remain on his feet still? Does it look like they're just going to bail on that thing, that scheme switch or whatever they were going to do?
I don't know if I'd call it a scheme switch. It's what they were doing. It's just
a change. Yeah.
But based on what I was watching earlier, and look, I have to.
See you, Pete.
We can still hear you.
He's still here. You can keep talking.
Okay.
Pete.
Mike Hall.
This
I mean,
is the
I have
best way to listen to Pete.
I have to. Mike Hall was good, and Mike Hall was good in terms of being able to hold up against run defense, in addition to being a great pass rusher. Along with that, like he mentioned, Sam Kamara was okay, but I never felt like, until we got to the depth, the real depth deep down the roster, that the Browns were overall, I thought the defensive line was carrying the defense for most of the game. And like right now, if I was to sort of grade this like game, I thought Briggs was better than Ika, who, yes, immediately second play in the game right on the ground where I'm used to seeing him. But I've always thought, like, when they drafted Briggs, like, even though Jim Schwartz is allegedly very, very involved in the Schwartz pick, I felt like Briggs is more suited to like the style that Jim Schwartz wants to play. That one gap, be able to dent or impact the offensive line quickly to try to create disruption. And throughout the first half, early in the third quarter, you saw a lot of disruption. It fell apart when, you had Chris Williams, who's a 310-pound guy playing big end, and some of these late guys who are basically greedy, I got to get plays if I'm going to sort of show my ability, and they lost all contain. It sort of was a mess, but like throughout, you still saw the defensive line able to disrupt the line of scrimmage, to cause some problems and generate pressure. I know a lot of people are going to go, well, the Browns are getting sacks. They did get pressure, and they were able to sort of be disruptive. So I was happy with that. I was happy with the fact that Hall could hold up in some of those situations. I thought he was really effective early. That fourth down play, they're really effective. So there's a lot of things I thought were positive early on the defensive line. Easily the best group on the field for the Browns overall.
All right. Okay. So D-line, I think a lot of positive takeaways. Although I do think it's interesting. Again, there he goes. All right, he's going to try to get back in with his video. I think it was interesting watching because it kind of felt like obviously they're not going to go out there and throw in a lot of their most exotic looks on the defensive side of things. So it really felt to me like they went out there and just said, kind of go play football. And we're going to just put you guys in just and not even base, to be honest with you, because base is more exotic than what they are running in that game. It was just like, go out there and see if you can make some plays is what it felt like defensively. And it did feel like the defensive line was able to do that. Casey, let's bring it to you for the last of the main takeaways out of the group here before we move on to a couple other topics. What was your big takeaway from today's game?
One of my biggest concerns coming into the season was every tight end not named David Njoku. And I actually saw a pulse there today. Akins looked fine, and Zaire Mitchell-Payton there was flashes of good there. So while I'm not completely relieved, I need to see more of it, but I did see something today that I didn't know if I was going to. So I'd like to see Trayton Welch more. I've seen him actually get on the field, didn't get to see him make any plays. I'm a little curious because I knew with all the starters sitting, I figured we'd see some of the younger guys earlier. They kind of trickled them in later. I think we'll see a lot more of them next week against Minnesota. But yeah, for tight end, I definitely saw a little bit of a pulse today. So excited to see if they grow a little bit.
Yeah, I agree. Pete, does your opinion on tight end change at all with what you saw today?
No, I see two tight ends and no other reason. And like, if I'm really honest, I don't know why we bother with Giovanni Ricci. Like every time he's on the field, I'm just sort of like, all right, this is cute. Let's move on.
Christina?
But I like Trayton Welch.
He's taking fullback snaps away from James Hudson.
Well, he's taking fullback. If the Browns are smart, he's taking fullback snaps away from Mike Hall. But to me, like, I like Trayton Welch, but nothing is compelling enough to say he needs a roster spot. I think it's a situation where the Browns, with him and ZMP, try to get them to the practice squad. If people grab them, so be it. But I don't know that there's anything compelling enough to go to for another team to sort of grab them. Akins is going to make the roster based on money. Yes, he has some certain roles, but it's Njoku and a whole lot of receivers. And that's fine. Like, based on what I saw, the receivers look good. Like, the receivers look promising, and we still haven't seen Cooper and Judy and those guys and Elijah Moore on the field. But I was happy with what I saw in terms of guys getting open. David Bell, who needs to have, look good until he left with an injury. But I think we saw a lot of life from those guys. Like Michael Woods, he's big. He's bigger than you think he is. Good play strength and enough speed to be interesting. Like, he right now to me is the sort of the friskiest guy at on the fringes. I guess I was a little surprised we didn't see Matt Landers as much, since there was so much hype. And look, I think he's a practice squad guy, and maybe that's part of it. They sort of want to sort of keep it quiet and let him sort of casually be a giant 6'4", 200-pound guy who runs a 4.3, slip to the practice squad. But like, given what I figured at some point they were going to take a shot. Maybe they wanted to, but they couldn't with the blocking. But Michael Woods is sort of the interesting guy to me. Jalen Darden doesn't. I want Jalen Darden to be successful. There's nothing that's sort of jumping out to me. And then you've got a lot of these other guys like Brown, who's interesting, might end up in the practice squad. He also might end up in the UFL, both potentially as a developmental water bug, speedy guy. So it like, I feel the wide receiver group is always going to be a good group to me. I think we're seeing evidence of that beyond. Like, I think in Cleveland, maybe they're more positive because everybody's very excited about Cedric Tillman. And you have a rookie you've got, and, we'll see what these other guys do. But I think around the national perspective, it's Cooper and Judy and nobody else. And even then, they don't like Judy all that much anyway. So it's really just Cooper. I think for people really paying attention, they feel a little bit better about that group.
Pete, let me bring it back to Casey's, the tight end group, and Abby and Sam, I'll send it over to you two. They obviously have David Njoku, as Pete says, and he's a guy that everybody needs to concern themselves with. I can't think – there's not a ton of teams that have two guys that you really need to concern yourself with at tight end, but you do want to have the depth there. So what did you guys take away from some of the stuff you saw out of the tight end position, some of the depth at tight end the Cleveland Browns have? And is there a reason – again, Casey gives you a little bit of hope. Pete, no hope at the tight end. Is there a reason you guys feel a little bit of hope when it comes to the depth at tight end? Abby, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm kind of in agreement with what Pete was saying, that I don't think you need to have insane depth at tight end. Like, the fact that you have a Pro Bowler on your roster at the position, I think is a big deal in and of itself. And then I liked what I saw from Akins today. And, I think he's obviously going to get some more looks now that Harrison Bryant is not a part of this roster anymore. So, the fact that we don't have significant depth beyond that, I don't think is a huge concern and is going to have a massive impact on the Browns offense. And, just feeling good about those two guys for me personally is enough.
Yeah, I would agree for the most part. I was pretty glad that they ended up signing Akins when they did last year. I know that he didn't make a whole lot of an impact, but I think he's a solid player. And I know that we kind of look at the tight end depth charts and think like, well, it's a lot weaker than it has been talent-wise, I guess, in years past. But I also think that they're kind of at the point where the offense has sort of moved past the strong need for significant depth at that position. Like, we're not at the point where we were, Kevin Stefanski's first year, where it was like, all right, we're running this 12 personnel, we're going 13 a lot as well. Like, that's the main core of the offense. We're now at a point where they've brought in Dorsey, like they're evolving this thing to be more quote unquote modern, to adapt to the quarterback skill set. And that's going to use less of multi-tight end sets, I think. And I think that's why they don't seem to be all that concerned about going out and finding more guys for that position group.
So I didn't mean to laugh right in the middle of that, Sam. You just hit me with a case of PTSD because I thought about those 13 personnel days, and I thought about Austin Hooper running wide open, catching a pass, and immediately just falling to the ground. And
down.
It's just like, I don't know who falls faster, him or Ika. It's a whole thing that I'm going to have to look into. We'll do some video analysis on it as the season goes along. All right, so everybody's big takeaways. Again, the Browns today back in action against the Green Bay Packers. They fall 23-10. Again, the result, I don't think we're not obviously talking about it because it doesn't really matter all that much. But let's go back. We've kind of thrown these people in there, but let's spend a little time talking about something that I think we can all kind of be excited about, which is you really got a chance to see some of these new players, these rookies specifically, that we've talked about all freaking offseason, whether it starts at your top pick in the draft in Mike Hall or Zach Zinter or Jabari Thrash, or any of the other kind of depth pieces that they brought in, or lower pieces in the draft. I know we saw Nathaniel Watson, who wound up leaving with, I think, a quad injury, but he was out there, a linebacker, for a good portion of the game. Just, you guys can take it. Let's just have a discussion about, how we feel about Pete. You can start us off maybe with Zach Zinter, because you had some strong statements on Zinter, and I know he had a pretty bad penalty there, which I think is just more a result of playing in the system and knowing when to go downfield on an RPO and when not to. But maybe start with Zinter and let's work our way around on these other rookies that we saw.
If you're asking me who is better in this game, I thought Javion Cohen was better between the two guards. And I like Javion Cohen as a target for the Browns. I have criticisms of him. He's solid in pass pro. Right now, he just offers no punch off the ball. And he has a bad habit of lunging, which sort of exposes him. But he was solid in pass protection. He's just a big old boy who gets in the way, which is half the job. I thought Zinter had a little bit of problems with that basic issue and let some penetration in the backfield where he's turning around, having to catch guys behind him and some of those things. I think he will ultimately be fine. But, in a game where sort of these two guys were sort of featured, I like for one thing, I really like the fact that these guys were playing together, even though they started with Teller initially. But not the most glorious day for Zinter. The center situation probably didn't help him. The tackle situation probably didn't help him either. But ultimately, there's a lot there that needs to sort of pick up and go. And that's why, I'm always an advocate of don't draft rookies to start at offensive line, because it's a really difficult job. Get them time to sort of figure it out and develop. DeJuan Jones, incredibly fortunate that it worked out as well as it did, even though he had big holes in this game. But this is why you need to take these guys basically a year early and take the time to develop them. And I think that's what you got here. But Zach Zinter, not a great day, but he's fine. Javion Cohen, not a great day, but enough to sort of keep in the conversation. I don't immediately go, well, Javion Cohen's going to make the roster. but he's interesting enough that like I want to see more of Cohen.
And you guys can throw it around. You can stick with Zinter and your impressions there, or if you want to talk, I mean, I think a lot of people are going to want to talk about Thrash, and I think a lot of people are fairly high on Thrash coming out of the draft, and I think a lot of people didn't even know who he was coming out of the draft, to be honest. But they go get him in the third round, and was it the third round? Am I losing my mind? No.
Fifth round.
No, fifth round. I don't know what I'm talking about.
Sorry.
They go get him. That's all right. That's good. I need to be checked.
Speak up. Good job.
Yeah, thank you. They get him in the fifth round, and man, that dude went out and made some plays. Maybe we spend a minute talking about Jabari Thrash.
Yeah, can we get him in the game earlier? I would like to see him in the game earlier. I was surprised it took him so long to get in. I thought, he would get in a little bit with Winston and those guys, but it worked out fine with DTR. He looked great. I mean, what a great catch over the middle. He looks sharp in his routes. I'm excited to see what else he can do, right? He looked very crisp and looked like he belonged out there. Yeah, so I mean, that was probably one of the most exciting parts of the day was watching him and DTR connect like that. So,
yeah, one of the biggest knocks during the draft cycle was he had a high drop percentage his last year. And then it comes out later he was dealing with an injury, and it was apparent. Man, he's got great hands. He was snagging him out there. It looked nice.
Any thoughts, Abby, Sam? Thoughts on Thrash or any of the other rookies you saw play?
Yeah, I mean, Thrash was also kind of on my list there of standouts from the game, and just kind of agree with what the rest of the guys have said. A couple good plays. That play that Brad mentioned that was up the middle there was a nice play to see from him. Obviously it's limited reps here in the preseason, but if he can stack a couple, the next 2 preseason games, have similar performances, I think, we might see him integrated in this offense a little more come the regular season.
Yep, I agree. He seemed like he just knows how to get open, right? Like he was in man, he was beating his defender, but in zone, even on the fourth down play that got knocked down, like he found the soft spot. He was open past the sticks. It was batted. So I think he definitely has a shot at making the team for sure. He showed a lot of good things in this game.
I would also say, so at cornerback, I was interested to watch Harden and Halasi. I think they're kind of like in a competition there a little bit. Halasi got cooked a little bit on the outside. They let him go one-on-one, kind of left him by himself. He did. I don't really blame him. He was out there by himself, you know what I mean? And he did get cooked like twice in a row, but I thought Miles Harden played well. And he's kind of my guy, so I was happy. He got up, made a couple tackles at the line of scrimmage. I don't think he's the same kind of man-to-man player that Halasi is. So he's probably going to get more reps like in the slot like he did today. But I don't know. I was happy with what Harden did. He seems like a willing tackler as a cornerback. Halasi does too. I mean, they both come up and tackle pretty well. But Halasi just given too much space at the line of scrimmage if you're going to put him out there by himself on an island, I think.
Miles Harden hits people. That's like if his appeal coming out of South Dakota State or South Dakota, is that he's seems like a good fit to slide inside, which the Browns right now need, because right now with Greg Newsom's situation up in the air, it's basically Cam Mitchell or Miles Harden theoretically. Miles Harden, I don't know how he did coverage-wise, but he did not look out of place in terms of the physicality of the game, which is a good thing, just in terms of being able to – how does he look against NFL guys? And he puts guys on the ground, which is step one. Halasi, not a rookie, but a guy I was sort of intrigued by coming into this year. Certainly had some questions. He's a press corner with agility, not unlike Martin Emerson, which is why I think the Browns grabbed him when they could. Not a great day for him. It's an evaluation in terms of you put him in a weird situation to see if he can do it. And like if the Browns are in a real game, I don't think if Halasi's out there, they're going to say, we're going to put you on an island against, the best of the best. Now, competition being what it is, you want him to look maybe a little bit better, but like 4 guys like this, four rookies, 4 Zinter, where, guys who are struggling or whatever, wherever they are, you just want to see the process from game to game to game, from this game to joint practices to, we should see, I think, the biggest step potentially to the Minnesota game because of the joint practices. And then what do we get, from everybody in that Seahawks game? What are the Browns even going to do? But like, that's sort of what we want to see is the progression over there. Because like, if you just look at this as one game and you go making a total evaluation, you lead yourself to a bad path because some guys just don't have it that day or whatever. Or like we saw this game, like Buki Watson's rookie debut, not exactly great, makes one tackle and hurts his quad. So among the number of injuries that did, and then the other rookie that didn't get a whole lot of mention, undrafted guy, Aiden Robbins, got some long legs, man. He's got giant quads and long legs. Had almost no production in college. But like, you can see why a team would be interested in a guy like Aiden Robbins. He's huge, and he caught the ball in the one play really well. So it's going to be interesting to see more of him.
Listen, Pete Smith is your home for evaluation on quads and legs. Quads and legs all day long with Pete Smith. Right. It's a new podcast coming out next week with Pete Smith.
Hams.
All right. Hey, listen, I got one more thing before we wrap up here tonight on the OBR postgame show. And again, just the first of every game, whether it's preseason, regular season, and of course postseason. We will be doing the OBR postgame show right here on the OBR streaming network. But I think a thing that we're going to want to keep track of, getting away from the specific players and how they played and all that, I think something that we're really all going to be honed in and interested in. And I want to hear all of your take on just what you were able to pull from it today with the brand new offensive coaching staff with Ken Dorsey and Deuce Staley. And obviously you're not seeing Deshaun Watson and Nick Chubb and the receivers and the tight ends and even most of the starting offensive line. But with the new offensive coaches in there, we know Kevin Stefanski is that main number one play caller. We know the offense is his baby. But did we see anything today? Did we see anything today, knowing that they're not going to flash anything crazy, but did we see anything today where we maybe saw some of the fingerprints of Ken Dorsey and how the offense is going to get impacted with his input and with Staley's input and all that?
Yeah, I thought so. They were very vanilla. They're not going to give anything away, but there was some RPO stuff. I still think the offensive line it feels like the offensive line needs to get on the same page as the RPO stuff, as they seemed a little lost at times in the RPO. Like, that needs to marry better, certainly in practice and through this week and everything before the season. Of course, starters weren't out there, so that's a big thing too. But that's going to be a huge part of the RPO game is can they marry that run game? I mean, to Pete's point, who's kind of taught me this, the RPO is supposed to be a run play first, right? So the blocking in front of that has to be better than it was today, as it looked kind of jumbled mess at times when they tried to go to that. As far as the pass game, though, I was really happy with. I mentioned it earlier. Guys were open. I felt like they ran some plays where there was easy yardage to be had, which is something they've talked about in the offseason about trying to be able to get easy yards at times. So, and I thought that stuff was there. So I thought the fingerprints were there, but in a very vanilla way, which you don't expect much more than that at this point. Yeah. So on the offense, that's kind of what my thoughts were.
Yeah, I feel like we saw some moments of some more pre-snap movement that we haven't really seen previously. Like Brad mentioned, most of the time pretty vanilla in general. So I don't think for preseason we're going to expect to see a lot of it. But the moments that it did happen were, enjoyable. And I think, Ken Dorsey is going to continue to bring more of that. I do think what, other than the play on the field is important is the way the players have been speaking about the offensive coaching staff and just, a lot of confidence and positivity with the guys that they've brought in the building, the trust that they're putting in the players. So I think I take more of that, from the preseason than the actual play on the field.
All right, you, Casey, thoughts?
They were still under center more than I thought they would be, to be honest with you. But they're like you said, it's vanilla. They're not trying to show their hand. The boots and stuff that Huntley was running, the stuff we've seen before. But the wide receiver concepts, the route concepts, you could definitely tell there's different spacing, and they're going to attack vertically more than they have in years past. But it's like anything else. Like they're not trying to show their hand. It's the preseason. So a lot of those nuances, we're going to have to wait around until September to really find out how different it's going to be.
Well, and just to piggyback on that, Casey and Pete and Sam, you guys can jump in on this. Maybe it's a better way to phrase it is what kind of things could we maybe look for just as hints, right? I don't think anything's going to be overly blatantly obvious as far as, all right, now look at the in-depth stuff that they're running during this game. In the meantime, they're taking the Minnesota Vikings 4-stringers by complete surprise. I don't think we're seeing that, but just little hints, little things that the fans, that the people watching us here, or just people watching the game, the fans can take away and go, oh, wow, that's a little hint as far as maybe a little difference that we're going to see, a little wrinkle that we're going to see with the input from Ken Dorsey and the new offensive staff.
Yeah, I think you saw a couple different things and things that have already been mentioned, but I think of the RPO touchdown that was called back. We didn't see a whole lot of RPO in the Browns offense the past couple of years, and I know that was a core thing that they wanted to incorporate. The other thing was that rub route that David Bell caught and sprung for a big gain that was called back because of the OPI. That's something that the Bills did a lot of, and they have a lot of different receivers with different skill sets, but they all kind of had them do similar things, which was interesting. I know they had Shakir and Diggs do a lot of those rub routes, and then I think another thing is they had Josh Allen throw a lot of the intermediate to deep routes towards the sideline. I know that Thrash caught one of those, I believe, on the left side of the field, probably like 15 yards or something. So I think just plays like that where the goal is to kind of create space and then get your receivers into those areas of field. I think that's kind of something you can see and be like, all right, I think they're going to do more of that, or at least try to do more of that with the first string as we go into the season.
And Pete, I'm gonna what'd you have?
Real quick. I mentioned Jerry Judy's interview jokingly earlier, but the interesting thing that he did say is, there's been so much talk about the choice or option routes, and that's been like the buzzword, right? About this offense. But when Judy talked about it, like that's the most simple way to make sense is like basically, based on leverage. He was kind of talking in the interview about this. Based on leverage or how the defensive back is lined up, I now have an option in which way I'm going to run my route, as opposed to it being more scripted or augmented before, right? So now he can, go right, go left, whichever way. And I think you saw some of that today where you can get open easier when you have these option routes. It's not that, it doesn't have to be that bogged down and complicated as a lot of people are making it. It's really just about leverage and which way you can get open, and you and your quarterback identifying the same thing and taking advantage of that. And I thought Judy kind of articulated that pretty well in the interview. It's pretty much that simple at times. So I thought that was a good point. And you could literally take what he said and see it on the field at times, especially towards the end when DTR was in.
All right, Pete, as we get ready to wrap up the first post-game show of the 2024 season, I'm going to give the last word to you. And let's talk about progression for a minute. We're done with the first preseason game. Again, final score, whatever. But we saw what we saw out of the Cleveland Browns today. Let's talk about progression, and let's talk about what are we looking for. And Pete, what are you looking for as far as this week of practice for the Cleveland Browns going into next week's game again, 4:25 next Saturday against the Minnesota Vikings? What's the progression we're looking for here?
Well, building on what they did well in this game, which is receivers getting open, the passing game flowing reasonably well, and the defensive line, can the Browns find a way to run the ball? I mean, it's not where it needs to be, clearly, and you can blame some of that on the offensive line issues. Fine, but this is what they ran into last year, where Joe Flacco was just drop back and throw it 45 times. That's unrealistic. They've got to come up with some answers to do those type of things. And then defensively, look, it's always funny because Jim Schwartz's defense is horrible for preseason, because he gives guys so much freedom and there's not much protecting them, and they're not game planning or doing these things. So it looks really bad at points, but being better in coverage, being better in just not giving up so much so easily and being able to flow to the ball better and those type of things. I think, you sort of get in that. I don't care how old you are in this game. That first game hits a little bit different in terms of, especially for these younger guys, the extra adrenaline, sort of getting used to, some of these guys punch themselves out so fast because they're so hyped up, getting used to the speed of the game and all those things. And how is that going to adjust? And let's use Zach Zinter as an example. I would expect it will slow down at least a little bit for him in week 2, and some of these other guys that you're able to sort of play more controlled, be able to hopefully play better. So it's really about just trying to address some of the issues that they had and just continuing to build on it. The one thing I would add, as much as I want to make, I poked it fun at Cade York. I would say this: being able to 2-step and kick that ball in the end zone is awesome. Because listen, we talk about the kickoff and all this stuff, and everybody's saying it's give huge advantage to the offense. If I'm the kickoff team, I will give it to them on the 30 every time if I can. That's actually super useful. I don't want to have them return it if it's such an advantage for the return team. Give it to them on the 30 and let's move on. And Cade York can do that. That's actually pretty cool. And if you are trying to trade him or whatever, that is useful in addition to be able to kick the 55-yard field goal. Those things are all good. So if I could skip the kickoff part of this and just give them the ball 30 every time, I would do it.
Ooh, if that's the strategy around the NFL, they're going to be so disappointed.
Yes,
right?
They will be pissed.
Next year, kickers are kicking from the 10.
Yeah,
that's pretty much. We'll separate. We'll separate.
Trash it completely after this.
All right, listen. First post-game show in the books. We're doing it every game. Next week, after the 425 game in Minnesota, we'll be right back here with the OBR post-game show. Then we're going to really find out which one of you sickos or diehards, because the game after that out in Seattle at 10 o'clock p.m., we're going to find out which one of, frankly, we're going to find out which one of us sickos are the true diehards to see who's going to be around for that post-game 10 o'clock p.m. after the third preseason game as we gear up for Cleveland Browns season. The most important thing, though, we talked about a lot of stuff. The most important thing, the Cleveland Browns are back. Football was back at Cleveland Brown Stadium, and it was great to see. And it's going to be another great season of football here in Cleveland. So that's going to do it for us here on the OBR postgame show. Again, make sure wherever you're watching us, like, subscribe, follow along with the OBR, and get over to the OBR.com and hit subscribe so that you can read up on everything these amazing people are writing about the Cleveland Browns nonstop. As we've got wall-to-wall information. We got wall-to-wall stuff coming at you during the entire Cleveland Browns season. Go follow. I've just realized that while the OBR might be the oldest and largest independent Brown site in Cleveland, we now lead the league in underscores and Twitter handles. And now I'm thinking I got to change mine. We got Abby and Casey and Sam and Pete all killing it with the underscores. Brad, you and I got some work to do. Make sure you go follow Brad, Abby, Sam, Casey, Pete on Twitter, as they're going to get you more information throughout the entire season, and they'll have fun with you as well. This has been awesome. The Cleveland Browns do fall to the Packers 23-10, but it's been great talking a little football with everybody, and we can't wait to do it. Stay tuned to the OBR streaming network all week long, Monday through Thursdays. We got shows going nonstop for more Browns and other coverage. So that's going to do it for us. Thank you guys all for joining. It was a pleasure. The chat was live tonight. We appreciated you for joining us, and we'll talk to you after next week's game. Until then, cheers. Go Browns.